Yin-yang blast that Han Sen had practiced for a long time was eventually put into use. Yin-yang blast invented by Professor Bai was a method to use strength, and it could be used by people of any status. Han Sen's conversion rate of the Yin force had reached over 95%. Initially, he thought it might take some extra work to get rid of Tai Yi. After all, the Yin force could not hurt Tai Yi when his limbs were hit. Only when Han Sen hit Tai Yi where the inner organs were located could Han Sen manage to injure the vulnerable organs. However, unexpectedly, Tai Yi was so confident in his fitness and super diamond body that Tai Yi did not try to block Han Sen's punches at all, which saved Han Sen a lot of trouble. Since it was merely a contest, Han Sen did not have any murderous thoughts. Otherwise, if he hit Tai Yi's head, Tai Yi would at least become an idiot if he was not killed. However, Tai Yi was not to blame for his negligence. In such an interstellar era where efficiency is everything, there were few people willing to spend time and energy to practice the Yin force. In addition, even fewer people could succeed. Normally speaking, an evolver could greatly improve their ability to fight no matter what hyper-geno art they practiced. For example, Thunder Knife that Han Sen had received but did not have time to practice yet could show obvious effects in a short amount of time. However, the practice of the Yin force not only needed a lot of time, but it did not help as much in improving one's ability to fight. In the very beginning, it would be commendable if the Yin force could penetrate 1 inch with a low conversion rate. In terms of hunting large creatures, one's ability to fight was not enhanced, but weakened. For larger creatures, even their skin would be more than 1 inch thick. With the Yin force, one could not even penetrate their skin. In the meantime, one's force was reduced by almost half. So, this skill was completely useless. And frankly, it sucked. There were few people who practiced the Yin force and even fewer who succeeded. Tai Yi had such a great fitness that even his inner organs were tough enough to endure hits above 100. If his opponent were not Han Sen, but someone with a fitness index just over 100, the Yin force would not really hurt Tai Yi if the conversion rate was under 95%. A conversion rate of 80% was quite rare already. Tai Yi had never seen such powerful Yin force before in his life, so he did not think Han Sen had any way to hurt him in the first place. Han Sen repeatedly punched Tai Yi, hurting his inner organs secretly. The Yin force could not be detected easily, and it was completely normal for someone to feel pain under strong strikes, which was why Tai Yi did not pay any attention. After Tai Yi used his force, his injured inner organs collapsed. That was why Han Sen told him not to move. If Tai Yi went to the doctor directly, the consequences will not be very severe. However, Tai Yi still tried to attack, which worsened his injuries in inner organs. Without resting for several months, he would not be able to get up again. The doctors from the medical team quickly carried Tai Yi was turning up the whites of his eyes away, leaving Han Sen enjoying the cheers and applause alone on the stage. No one had imagined that the invincible tiger of blue blood was defeated like that, in such an unimaginable way. Tai Yi's choice to let Han Sen hit him was seen as a sign of ignorance and arrogance, while Han Sen became the hero and glory of the southwestern galaxy overnight. Many real masters were astonished by Han Sen's performance. Naturally, they could tell that Han Sen was hurting Tai Yi's inner organs with the Yin force. However, the super diamond body that Tai Yi practiced had an effect on enhancing his inner organs, although it was the first stage. Without the strength of over 100, even Yang force could not hurt Tai Yi's heart directly, let alone the Yin force. Han Sen had a fitness level around 110. The fact that he was able to beat Tai Yi like that indicated his incredible talent in practicing the Yin force. With numerous advanced officers present, among whom many were surpassers, no one dared to say that they could use the Yin force better than Han Sen. Many surpassers looked at Han Sen with more respect. A young man who could endure the boredom to practice the Yin force so well was in no way an ordinary person. His perseverance and insistence were all what it took for people to remember his name. The last fight was between Zheng Yuze and Han Sen were competing for the title of Southwest Soldier King. The fight for the third place was cancelled because of the serious injury of Tai Yi. It did not cost Han Sen much effort to beat Tai Yi, which made it easier for Han Sen to fight Zheng. Zheng Yuze had a fitness level similar to Han Sen's when Han Sen used all the methods to improve his fitness. In addition, Zheng Yuze was a good fighter, so he would not be careless in front of Han Sen, who had just beaten Tai senseless. Zhang Yuze was very careful and took the defense position in the beginning, trying to beat Han Sen, who had already fought once, by consuming his energy, which showed his respect to Han Sen as well. This way, Han Sen had the perfect opportunity to fully demonstrate the skills that he had learned. 7 kill, double blade, diversion, and other skills were so great that the soldiers were all bedazzled, applauding louder and louder. In the eyes of the true masters, Zhang Yuze had lost from the very beginning. The two persons had similar fitness. Maybe Zhang Yuze was even stronger. However, in terms of the cultivation of martial arts, Han Sen was obviously on a much higher level. Zhang Yuze was completed following Han Sen's lead. He could only act passively, without any hope to win. Nowadays, less and less young people are truly dedicated to martial arts. Most people only focus on the skills instead of the arts. That's why they never reach a high level. This Han Sen is very good, looking like a true master. He will have a great future for sure, said the chief with approval. The secretary smiled wryly inwardly. The more the chief liked Han Sen, the bigger his mistake was. However, after being criticized by the chief, the secretary had realized that he should stop covering up his mistake, but face it to avoid similar mistakes in the future. Without any suspense, Han Sen beat Zhang Yuze and became the new Southwest Soldier King. Zhang Yuze was not able to fight back effectively from the beginning to the end. It was as if the two persons were not on the same level at all. In fact, Zhang Yuze was afraid before he even started. Terrified by Tai's injuries inflicted by Han Senator, Zhang Yuze was too conservative to perform at his usual level. If he could fight normally instead of being overly defensive, Han Sen would not be able to win so smoothly. Although the title of Southwest Soldier King was an annual one, it was still quite valuable, especially for the fact that Han Sen beat Tiger of Blue Blood Tai to gain it. The chief himself personally awarded Han Sen the medal and certificate. Unfortunately, there was no material or monetary reward in the military, which upset Han Sen a little bit. The soldiers who had participated in the contest returned to their troops and told others about how Han Sen beat Tai, making the name Han Sen known to almost everyone in the Southwest Galaxy, which was a great honor. "I'm sorry, Captain. I messed up," Tai said wryly to the good-looking man sitting next to him, lying on the bed in the hospital. "Kitty cat, don't feel sorry for yourself. A man can only grow in mistakes. If a man had never made a mistake, it only means that he is a dedicated flower that has never seen storms. You are still a kitty cat right now, but after experiencing mistake after mistake, you will become the true tiger of blue blood one day. Mistakes are not bad for you. As long as you have not died yet, those mistakes will nourish you eventually," the good-looking man said with a smile. "Captain," a hunk as strong as Tai almost sobbed. To cry after being beaten is not blue blood style. The good-looking man patted Tai on the head lovingly. Someone had seen this scene. He would definitely feel weird or even amused. The good-looking man seemed to be in his 20s, much younger than Tai. However, Tai looked like a child in front of him. However, as weird as it looked, there was a harmony to it. Although it looked amusing, there was nothing too strange. If someone knew the good-looking man, he would not feel weird about it at all. Lu Hui, the captain of Blue Blood Reserve Force, was only 27 years old but has the nickname Devil Captain. No one knew how strong Lu Hui was. The Blue Blood Reserve Force members were like children in front of Lu Hui, including Tai. The training schedule of Blue Blood Reserve Force was most likely made and executed by Lu Hui. The nickname of Tai, Tiger of Blue Blood, was in fact from Lu Hui. However, Lu Hui initially called Tai Kitty Cat of Blue Blood. Except for Lu Hui, anyone who called Tai that would be beaten hard. Then, the other members of the reserve force twisted the name and called Tai the Young Tiger, which later became Tiger of Blue Blood when spread wider. Get better, and there are worse training waiting for you in the future. Don't think there is no consequence for your loss. After you go back, your training will be doubled, Lu Hui said lightly. "Yes, Captain, I will train harder. Next time, I will not lose to that guy," Tai said, gritting his teeth. "He is no longer your opponent. However, it is a nice thought to have. Keep it." Lu Hui smiled and thought of Han Senator. Reflecting on the details of Han Sen's performance in the contest, Lu Hui curled his lips into a strange smile. When Han Sen returned to Daphne, he reported to Ji Yinran's office. Just when he entered the office, he smelled fragrance before he saw his girlfriend throwing herself at him. She wrapped her legs around his waist and held his faces with her hand, kissing him passionately. "My dear, you are so great. I love you so much." Ji Yinran did not expect Han Sen to beat Tai Yi and gain the post. She excitedly offered her hottest lips, which Han Sen would never turn down. He held her butts with his hands, admiring how plump and bouncy they were. Ji Yinran, who was shy in general but seemed to be in a great mood this time. She even unbuttoned Han Sen's shirt and kissed down his neck. When Han Sen went out of the office with limp legs, he could still hear Ji Yinran's tempting voice. "This is a special reward for you. I love this reward." Han Sen walked as he hung a little song. Before long, he suddenly felt a chill. Han Sen shivered and looked ahead. A woman in military uniform was standing opposite him, looking at Han Sen coldly as if he were an animal. The looks on the woman's face made Han Sen feel she was not looking at a man, or even a human. In her eyes, Han Sen was no different from a cat or dog. If Wendy could be described as a cold soldier, then this woman just seemed like a bloodthirsty killer. Although Han Sen had never seen this woman before, he had this impression already at the first sight. He could not tell why, but he thought this woman was so scary that he would rather beat 10 men like Tai Yi before pissing her off. The woman walked straight past Han Sen and, surprisingly, knocked on Ji Yinran's door. Who is that woman? How come I have never seen her before? Han Sen suddenly had a thought. At this time, the most plausible explanation for the woman who was not from Daphne to visit Ji Yinran was that the woman was the other guard. Although Han Sen did not know what the identity of the woman was, he could sense that the woman was much stronger than him with his keen perception. Han Sen even suspected that the woman was a surpasser, otherwise it was unlikely that she gave him a sense of suppression. Very soon, Han Sen's guess was corroborated. At night, Ji Yinran was chatting with Han Sen using Comlink lying on her bed. "That woman is your other guard?" Han Sen still remembered that woman and asked casually. "Yes, that is Colonel Annie. She is my new guard. Do not try to flirt with her. She is a surpasser. If you piss her off, I could not stop her," Ji Yinran said, smiling. "My dear wife, what is it that your family do? They're able to get you a surpasser as guard?" Han Sen couldn't help asking. Han Sen had never asked about Ji Yinran's family, but he was so surprised this time. Even those captains of interstellar warships will not be so extravagant that they used surpassers as their guards. "Have you been following the news recently?" Ji Yinran did not answer but asked. "Not a lot, but I know something." Han Sen would read the news from time to time in case that he knew too little about the society. "Have you seen any news related to the JIS?" Ji Yinran asked with a smile. "News about the JIS?" Han Sen thought about it and suddenly stared his eyes wide. "You mean the one who entered the election recently?" The next morning, Han Sen got up and teleported into God's sanctuary. This time, he did not rush to go hunting. He decided to go to the market of the Starwheel Shelter to buy some mutant beast souls. Even if mutant beast souls were not that helpful to him, he could easily elevate them into berserk mutant beast souls with the black crystal to make a lot of money. Such a good deal was not to be missed. Han Sen wandered around in the market of the Starwheel Shelter, which was much more bustling than the Goddess Shelter which belonged to Han's senator. However, mutant beast souls were still hard to find, and there was none of the sacred blood beast souls. Han Sen had his eyes on several mutant beast souls and asked for the price, but most of the owners did not want cash, but to trade for a beast soul on the same level. For the one sold for cash, Han Sen did not like them as much. 1 out of 100 beast souls would be berserk. So, if Han Sen sold berserk beast souls in large quantities, someone would eventually suspect him, which was why he did not want to sell too many. Currently, Han Sen was looking for a beast soul that could become a dozen or even dozens of times more valuable once it became berserk. Maybe he could even make enough money to purchase a sacred blood beast soul. That was not unlikely. He could not pick and choose sacred blood beast souls, but he could pick some rare mutant beast souls that were highly popular among evolvers. Once he made them berserk, their value would be incredibly high. Of course, if Han Sen kept the beast souls for a while, they would be useful to him as well. Han Sen wandered slowly in the market and saw 2 mutant beast souls in a shop. After a while, one of which he liked a lot. "Hello, how much do you want for the mutant snowy wolf?" Han Sen asked the owner, pointing at a wolf beast soul that looked like a snowball. Snowy wolves were not rare on the ice field. In fact, there were so many of them that they caused a lot of troubles. On the ice field, you could easily spot hundreds of thousands of snowy wolves wandering around. Although most snowy wolves were primitive creatures, normally speaking, humans could not attack such a large group at all. Some snowy wolves even had a group of 100,000. Without the team of thousands of people, humans could not fight the wolves. Therefore, unless it was in a large hunting campaign organized by the shelter owner, ordinary people could hardly kill any snowy wolves. To get their beast souls were even harder. On the other hand, the ability of the beast soul was essential to people living on the ice field. The beast soul could even save people's lives. Even primitive beast soul of snowy wolf was several times of other primitive beast souls. Mutant snowy wolf beast souls were even more inaccessible. Han Sen estimated that if he could produce a berserk mutant snowy wolf beast soul, its price will not be cheaper than ordinary sacred blood beast souls. The type of the beast soul of snowy wolf was armor. Different from ordinary armor, snowy wolf armor had an effect against the cold. The more advanced the beast soul was, the warmer it got. With a sacred blood snowy wolf beast soul, one could survive snowstorms on the snow field and go back safely. Even if one fell into an ice hole or slept in the glaciers, one would not be frozen to death. This ability was not to be taken lightly. Nature's force was horrendous, especially in God's sanctuary. If one unfortunately encountered snowstorm and got lost on the ice field, unable to find any shelters, then even evolvers with more than 100 in fitness level could easily be frozen to death. Of course, Han Sen was equipped with jade skin himself, so the ice and snow were not that harmful to him. Unless he lost food supply for a long time, he would not die from the cold. Trading for beast soul weapon on the same level, better be heavy sword. The owner glanced at Han Sen, lacking the enthusiasm that a seller should have. That was completely normal. After all, he was selling popular stuff which everyone wanted. Because the owner's request was specific, a deal was never made. A dozen minutes before Han Sen came, several people had come by and asked, but there was still no deal. "You want to trade for a St. Hall license?" Han Sen did not have beast souls on his hand, so he could only trade with licenses. "An S-Class license for evolvers. I could pay you extra, but I don't want anything below S-Class," the owner said directly. Although the mutant snowy wolf is valuable, it is not quite enough to be traded for an S-Class St. Hall license, right? Han Sen looked at the other mutant beast soul that the owner had. It was a black ape beast soul, 6 to 9 feet tall. Its hair looked like tungsten. The muscles on his chest were so strong that they looked like bulks of iron, looking magnificent. "You really have an S-Class St. Hall license?" The owner's eyes lit up. He eventually got excited and looked at Han Sen expectantly. "What is the type of this mutant beast soul?" Han Sen did not answer, but asked, pointing at the black ape. "It is a shape-shifting beast soul, violent ape. After shape-shifting, your strength will be enhanced greatly. However, it could only enhance your strength and would even hurt your flexibility a little bit." Being an honest man, the owner explained both the pros and cons of the mutant violent ape. "How much strength can it give me?" Han Sen's eyes lit up a little bit. Beast souls with shortcomings would definitely have more outstanding strengths. Pure strength was quite useful to Han Senator after all. His strength was not quite enough at this point. It was still hard for him to kill sacred blood creatures with strong defense. This depends on your fitness. Normally speaking, the increase should be more than 10 points, the owner pondered and said. Han Sen calculated and found that more than 10 points were quite good. With his current ability, he could easily achieve 120 to 130. If he evolved it into a berserk beast soul, the increase should be higher. One S-Class Evolver St. Hall license for 2 beast souls of yours. How about that? Han Sen took out a license and showed it to the owner. The ice field was a small region after all. If it were in a more populated area, many people would kill to trade to mutant beast soul for an S-Class St. Hall license. However, in this place, the resources were so limited that the owner was still hesitating about the deal. After pondering for a while, The owner obviously wanted the S-Class St. Hall license very much. He said decisively, "Okay, let's do it." The deal was completed smoothly, and Han Sen got the mutant snowy wolf and violent ape. Feeling excited, Han Sen summoned them to try them out. The snowy wolf turned into white leather mail that covered Han Sen's body. The helmet was shaped like the head of the wolf. Han Sen looked like the white werewolf from afar, looking quite handsome. As for the effect against the code, Han Sen also experienced it. He was much warmer after wearing the mail, feeling like air conditioning. Shape-shifting into the violent ape, Han Sen became a black ape and found empowered immediately. Obviously, the beast's soul enhanced his strength greatly. Although his body did become much clumsier, Han Sen could accept that result because of the enhancement in his strength. Han Sen was very satisfied with this deal. In the future, if he turned this beast's soul into a berserk one with the black crystal, he could choose to use it or sell it. Han Sen left the Starwheel shelter to hunt. Because the golden growler had not finished its evolution, Han Sen could not feed the violent ape or snowy wolf the black crystal at this point. Han Sen was about to go to the frozen lake, which was near the ocean and possibly connected to the ocean below ground. Because of the cold, the lake was frozen all year round and could be treaded upon by humans or mounts. Ordinary people only needed to drill a hole in the ice to fish creatures. Once creatures looking like fish left water, their abilities would be reduced greatly, making it much easier for them to be killed. Han Sen bought the specially made fish line and bait in the Alliance. When he came to the frozen lake, he found that it was no different from the glaciers. Under his feet was thick ice. Even the thinnest place was 3 to 6 feet thick. There were many people on the frozen lake. Because of the limited resources on the ice field, the frozen lake could be counted as a nice spot to go fishing since mutant creatures could be spotted sometimes. It took some patience to fish there. If he had good luck, it might only take one day for him to catch a mutant creature. If his luck was bad, it would take him more than half a month to catch one. Han Sen mainly came to the place to fill up his primitive geno points. Since the fish in the frozen lake were mostly primitive and small in size, they were perfect for him. Of course, it would be the best if he could catch a mutant creature. If not, it did not matter as well. In the large area of the frozen lake, Han Sen could see many people fishing next to holes of diameters around 3 feet. Han Sen did not plan to make the hole himself. He found a hole no longer used, took care of the thin ice that had formulated already, put the bait on the hook, and fished in the hole. Han Sen put down his stool and sat down. Wearing the leather mail of Snowy Wolf, he did not feel cold at all. Taking out a textbook of ancient language, Han Sen started to read as he waited for fish to take the bait. "It's you?" When Han Sen just sat down for a while, someone who walked past with staff in her hand ran to Han Sen in surprise after seeing him. Han Sen looked up and found it was the tall woman, Guan Tong. Seeing what she had and hit her hand, Han Sen figured that she was there to fish as well. "You're also here to fish?"
Han Sen smiled at Guan Tong.
"You. Thank you for last time." Guan Tong opened her mouth and did not know what to say.
"What?"
Han Sen was dazed, unable to perceive what he was thanked for. "Thank you for saving Starwheel Shelter," Guan Tong said hastily. "There was a piece of cake. I needed to thank you for carrying me back the other day," Han Sen said with a smile. Guan Tong, who was rather carefree, but couldn't help blushing hearing what Han Sen said. She had understood that Han Sen was fine the other day. Different from what she had thought, Han Sen did not need to be saved, while she took him on her back by force. "Go fishing now. If you're late, you will miss the nice spots." Han Sen pointed to the ice holes. Guan Tong nodded and quickly ran there. She did not know what to say, since this kind of situation was beyond her emotional intelligence. Guan Tong started to fish about 20 feet from Han Sen, while she glanced at Han Sen from time to time as she fished. Han Sen kept reading and did not notice her at all. More than half an hour later, Han Sen, who was reading, felt some movements on the fish line on his hand. Han Sen put down the book in his hands and looked to the buoy floating on the water, which was shivering slightly. Han Sen put his finger on the fish line and felt the shiver like a traditional Chinese doctor feeling the pulse. He did not pull immediately. After absorbing the red crystal, Han Sen's brain had much stronger perceptive abilities. From feeling the movements of the fish line, He could picture what was happening under the water in his mind. Disability was out of Han Sen's expectation, but it was a great thing for him at this point. Just by feeling the fish line, Han Sen had learned that the creature had not swaddled the bait at this point, but biting the edge of the bait. Suddenly, the fish line moved violently. Without any hesitation, Han Sen grabbed the fish line and pulled hard. The fish line was pulled rather hard on the other end. Han Sen did not pull it by force, but relaxed a bit and continued to roll in when the creature became weaker. As the creature pulled hard again, Han Sen relaxed the fish line again. After several times, the creature eventually became quite weak. Han Sen then pulled the fish line hard. It was a huge bluefish more than a foot long, with its scales gleaming dark blue light. Han Sen immediately turned his hand into a blade, cutting at the bluefish using the thunder knife skill he was still practicing, cutting its head off quickly. Primitive creature bluefish killed.
No beast soul gun.
Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 primitive geno points. Although it was just a primitive creature, Han Sen was quite glad already. There was not any risks and the gains were great. Also, the creature was readily available for eating. No wonder so many people had come to the frozen lake. Han Sen dissected the bluefish and cut it into thin pieces. Dipping the fish into the sauce he had brought, Han Sen felt the sweetness of the meat was stimulating his taste buds. It was incredibly tasty. Meat of bluefish eaten. 1 primitive geno point gained. Han Sen continued to read as he fished. In less than 2 hours, he had caught 4 bluefish and 3 gold anchovies. Although he had not gained any beast souls, his gains were considerable. People next to Han Sen were less lucky. When Han Sen had caught 7 fish already, the luckiest among the others had only caught 2 fish. Many people looked to Han Sen with jealousy. Every time Han Sen pulled the fish line, many people nearby would glance at him. Guantong was obviously less lucky. Like most people, she had got nothing since she came. She was not to be blamed for that. Not everyone had the perceptive ability that Han Sen had. It was normal not to catch anything, otherwise everyone would have come to the frozen lake. Guantong, the fish tastes good. Come here and try it. Han Sen waved to Guantong and said. Guantong had been there for a long time, but she had caught nothing, which made Han Sen feel a bit sorry for her. In addition, Guantong had carried him on her back. Han Sen then told her to share the fish with him, which he could not finish anyway. I have brought something to eat. Guantong felt quite shy, taking out some nutrition solutions from her pocket. Come here. It is rather boring to eat alone. There is so much food that it would be a waste if we don't finish it, Han Sen said with a smile. As Guantong was still hesitating whether she should go over, several people walked to Han Senator. One of them stared at Han Sen and said, Friend, you have a good appetite, even for a tomboy like this one. Han Sen glanced at those people. Those people did not have any fishing tools or personal belongings, so they did not seem to be fishing here. Fuck off.
Han Sen sighed coldly.
You have quite a temper, but I'm afraid that you have not been told who this place belongs to. The leader of the group of people, a middle-aged man, did not get mad, but smiled coldly at Han Sen. Those people did not take Han Sen's words seriously at all. They walked to Han Sen's side and started to pull the bag that Han Sen used to place the fish he caught. Didn't you hear me? Do not make me say it again, Han Sen frowned and said. Haha boy, you are tough. However, Black God Shelter is not the right place for you to get tough. The middle-aged man reached to grab the fish in Han Sen's back. Our boss at Black God says that half of the gains in the frozen lake must be handed to the Black God Shelter. You have 7 fish here, so I will make it cheaper for you, only taking 3 gold anchovies from you. Han Sen had heard that since the frozen lake was near one of the 3 biggest shelter, Black God Shelter, people from Black God Shelter would charge some fees from people who was fishing there. Normally speaking, only a primitive fish would be charged, and then the person could fish as long as he wanted to. These people asked for 3 fish from Han Sen, which were the most valuable ones. Obviously, they were jealous of Han Sen's gains and planned to blackmail him. Initially, Han Sen planned to give them a fish when encountering people from the Black God Shelter. After all, it was their place. However, these people wanted to blackmail him, which made Han Sen reluctant to give them even 1 fish. Seeing the middle-aged man reaching to his back, Han Sen did not speak but stepped on his hand. The strike was fast and fierce, which the middle-aged man could in no way dodge. His hand was stepped on by Han Sen, and he suddenly screamed like a pig. Damn it! He dared to attack us. The rest people saw Han Sen making a move and quickly summoned their beast souls, hitting Han Sen immediately. It seemed that they were being merciless, aiming at Han Sen's vital parts. Han Sen's eyes became cold. When other people tried to kill him, of course he would not be soft. When the weapons were about to hit him, he waved his right hand. With the flash of 3 purple lights, all the weapons were cut into pieces, and 3 persons in the front were cut in the chest and died immediately. The other 2 persons survived luckily because they did not run as fast. Full of terror, they turned to run while shouting, "Go away now. People of Black God Shelter are nearby, and they will be here in a minute." Guan Tong ran over and said. Han Sen nodded slightly and said, "You should go as well. Avoid this area for the time being." After parting with Guan Tong, Han Sen left the frozen lake. He did not want to make things worse between him and Black God Shelter, so there was no need for him to look for trouble. However, as Han Sen just left the frozen lake, a dozen mounds ran to him and approached him shortly. Obviously, they were targeting him. "Boss, he is the one who killed of our brothers." Among the dozen mounts, one was of the middle-aged man who had run away. He pointed at Han Sen and yelled. The dozen mounts quickly circled Han Senator, their leader, a man in black mail with eyes like hawk, stared at Han Sen and said coldly, "You killed my men?" "They were trying to kill me, so of course I could not choose to be killed," Han Sen said, looking at the man in black mail. The man in black mail quickly summoned a beast soul knife that was narrow and long. He pointed it to Han Sen and said, "No matter for what, you killed my men at the place of that God Shelter, so you deserve to die." As he said, the men quickly slashed the knife at Han Senator. The knife was so fast that it was a black light, coming to Han Sen's face in a second. Han Sen quickly changed his expression. The strike from the men in blackmail was so fast that Han Sen could not completely dodge it with his speed. He had to roar and summon the gargoyle to block the strike with his claws. As his claws were about to clash with the long knife of the man in black mail, the long knife unexpectedly disappeared. When it appeared again, it cut Han Sen's chest. Blood started to come out of Han Sen's injury in the chest. Luckily, Han Sen stepped back in time and diverted the majority of the force from the knife. In addition, the gargoyle glyph also made his skin tougher to block the damage. Otherwise, Han Sen would have been gutted by this strike. The knife skills of this man in black mail were very strange, and his fitness was incredible, definitely much tougher than Tai Yi. Han Sen was not killed by the strike, which surprised the men in black mail slightly. However, he did not stop attacking, but slashed at Han Sen again with his knife. Several people in the group also summoned their beast soul weapons to rush at Han Senator, judging from their speed. They were all evolvers with fitness above 100. Han Sen knew that he could not stay, or else he would definitely die there. Using Heresy Mantra and Overload at the same time, Han Sen quickly stepped away, running. However, those people besieged Han Sen, and there was no place for him to go. Han Sen had to rush at 2 of them. The 2 persons cut at Han Sen without hesitation. Han Sen moved left and right, like a willow tree in the wind, dodging the attacks from both persons. However, there was no way he could dodge the strike from the men in blackmail was chasing after him. His back became blood immediately. Han Sen gritted his teeth and stayed silent. He rushed away as fast as his legs would carry him and broke the siege of the 2 persons, running fast on the ice field. He knew he could not stay. The fitness of the man in blackmail was even stronger than his. In terms of both fitness and knife skills, the man was the top of the top. With the help of the evolvers with fitness level above 100, Han Sen would definitely die if he chose to stay. We could not let him leave alive. The man in black mail led the group of people to chase after Han Sen, showing strong desire to get rid of him. The resources on the ice field were so limited that it was completely normal to fight for them. The Black God would not tolerate any challenge to his interests or authority, otherwise there was no way he could lead the Black God Shelter. Han Sen had known that the competition for resources was heated, but he did not expect it to be as fierce as this. Han Sen's speed was lower than that Black God's to begin with. Without any place to hide on the ice field, there was no way he could run away like this. If there were no other evolvers, he could try to fight Black God, risking his life. However, under the circumstances, he could only try to run away. Turning quickly, Han Sen ran toward the frozen lake again. Seeing Black God approaching him, Han Sen jumped inside one of the ice holes and disappeared. Guard the ice holes nearby. I don't believe he will not come out, Black God commanded coldly. The temperature of the water in the frozen lake was incredibly low. Even someone with a fitness level above 100 could not last long under the water. In addition, Han Sen could not breathe under the water, which was why Black God believed that Han Sen could not stay longer than 5 minutes under the water before he appeared in other ice holes. At that time, even if Han Sen wanted to fight again, he would be almost frozen to death, which would make Black God kill him more easily. However, after Han Sen entered the water, he was not frozen to death as Black God predicted. Although the lake water was incredibly cold, Han Sen still had jade skin and the snowy wolf mail. The cold did not affect him too much. However, he did not dare to stay too long under the water. After all, he did not have the ability to breathe underneath the water. Although he could hold his breath for less than an hour because of his fitness, he could not survive longer. In addition, there were fish creatures under the water. Han Sen was afraid to encounter advanced fish creatures. Under the water, his ability to fight was much worse than on the land. Han Sen was swimming underneath the ice. Some fish creatures would approach to attack him from time to time, which were all hit senseless by Han Sen's fist. None of them dared to approach him again. The reason that Han Sen did not kill those fish was that he was afraid the bodies of the fish would float to the surface, which would expose his location under the water. The frozen lake was huge after all. If he swam further away and climbed up, he could naturally escape successfully. After Han Sen swam for a while, he felt there was something wrong with the current. The current behind him seemed to be moving. He turned around and found a silver creature that looked like an eel, which rushed toward him like a torpedo. The silver body as wide as a bucket stirred up the water, which made Han Sen roll around before he stabled himself. The eel turned around and rushed to Han Sen again. Han Sen thought it was not the way to go, so he moved sideways to dodge the eel and did his claws into its silver scales. As if he were climbing a tree, Han Sen wrapped his arms and legs around the eel's body. No matter how the eel rolled, Han Sen stuck to the creature. Although the claws were berserk, which made it tougher than ordinary sacred blood weapons, it only pierced the eel's body by 2 inches. The eel was so strong that it was definitely a sacred blood creature. In the water, Han Sen was not its match at all. He closed his eyes and held the eel tightly as it rolled. With the toxins on the claws, the eel shouldn't be able to survive too long. The eel rolled so hard that it was incredibly fast in the lake. Han Sen stayed on the eel for a long while and felt something was wrong. The eel turned out to be swimming deeper and deeper. Han Sen did not know how deep the lake was, but the pressure became higher and higher. Even with his fitness and snowy wolf mail, he still felt terrible from the pressure. Is it possible that this guy is immune to the poison? As Han Sen was feeling depressed, he suddenly felt emptiness below his feet and fell. The first thought Han Sen had was that the eel had jumped out of the water. However, he denied the thought immediately. He was falling down from the water and did not go up for it at all. Han Sen quickly opened his eyes to look, and what he saw made him feel dazed. Thump! Han Sen and the eel fell on the crystal-like floor. Luckily, Han Sen acted fast enough to flip himself up on the eel's back, making the eel take the impact. Having left the water, the eel wiggled like a snake on the crystal-like floor. However, the places injured by the claws on its body had become purple and black, easily to be spotted on its silver body. Han Sen did not think too much and cut the eel with the claws like crazy, making injury after injury on the silver body. The eel struggled to fight back, but it was very much poisoned. Having left the water, it soon left the ability to struggle and lied motionless on the floor. Sacred blood creature silver eel killed. Beast soul of silver eel gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points. Han Sen was excited. However, he did not look at the body of the killed creature. Looking straight ahead, Han Sen felt incredulous. Han Sen did not know whether Atlantis, the legendary city, was real. However, this place shocked him no less than finding Atlantis. A gigantic sailboat was sitting at the bottom of the lake. Water avoided the sailboat and formed a spherical space under the water. Han Sen and the silver eel fell on the left of the boat. Standing on the boat, Han Sen looked like an ant. This sailboat was a dozen times bigger than Daphne. However, it looked too ancient to be a spacecraft. As far as Han Sen could see, there was no gaps on the material of the boat. It looks like it was carved out from an entire piece of crystal. Such a huge project was only possible in the Alliance. In the God's Sanctuary, there were no available mechanics, and it was impossible to be carved out by hand. Judging from the huge silver oars, humans should not be able to manipulate this boat. As Han Sen was dazed, he suddenly heard noises from the mysterious crystal boat. Looking to the direction of the noise, Han Sen saw something coming out of the chambers of the boat. With the gleaming of golden light, Han Sen's eyes were even prickly. The thing gradually appeared in his sight, and what he saw first was a crab pincer, followed by the body of a golden crab. It slowly climbed down the rope. Seeing where the golden crab was going, Han Sen originally thought it was targeting himself. However, the golden crab quickly rushed to the dead body of the silver eel. Damn it! This guy wants to steal my food. Don't you know that I am famous for being petty?
Han Sen bristled.
Disregarding his injuries, Han Sen waved his claws at the golden crab. The golden crab was naturally much larger than ordinary crabs. However, it was not too big among creatures, about the size of a jeep. Like ordinary crabs, it could only climb sideways. Creatures with flaws like this were Han Sen's favorite. He went to the back of the crab and clawed at the golden shell. Ding! The seemingly clumsy body of the golden crab suddenly bounced, facing Han Sen with its head. The golden pincer blocked Han Sen's claws. Feeling a huge force, Han Sen's right hand started to bleed. His entire arm was numb, and he couldn't help stepping back a dozen steps before he could stable himself. Moving all its 8 claws, the golden crab moved sideways toward Han Sen quickly in an incredibly nimble way. What kind of crab is this? So weird. Han Sen turned back and ran around the crystal sailboat. Since the golden crab was incredibly fast and strong, Han Sen found he could not take care of the creature at all. Running after Han Sen for several laps, the golden crab failed to catch up with him and became so upset that it kept making noises with its pincer. Because Han Sen was so good at his footwork, although he was slower than the golden crab, he could leverage the crystal sailboat as an obstruction to get rid of the golden crab. As Han Sen was pondering what kind of tricks he needed to adopt to take care of this golden crab, the crab suddenly gave up chasing him and ran toward the body of the silver eel. I wonder if this guy eats the toxic meat of the silver eel. Will it be poisoned as well? Although Han Sen had this thought, the meat of the silver eel would be wasted if the golden crab was immune to the toxins. Thinking that, Han Sen ran to launch a sneak attack against the golden crab from its back, trying to stop it from eating the silver eel. Han Sen and the crab were both trapped in a dilemma. The golden crab could not catch up with Han Senator, nor could it eat the eel peacefully. They kept fighting, and none of them was able to take any advantage. Guarding the body of the silver eel, the golden crab faced Han Sen, no longer wanting to chase him. However, it did not dare to turn around to eat the meat either. With the golden crab next to him, Han Sen stared at the creature. Neither of the two knew how to proceed. Han Sen observed the golden crab carefully, wishing to find its weaknesses. If it were an ordinary crab, the links and gaps between its shells should be its weakness. However, this golden crab was obviously somewhat different. The links between its shells were of a deeper golden color. Although the links were narrow, he could tell that they were even tougher than the shells. As for gaps, the golden crab did not have any. It was as if the crab was made of a piece of gold. As Han Sen was feeling depressed, he suddenly saw the golden crab waving its pincer at him. Han Sen thought it was about to attack again, and then found it did not move. It was waving its pincer to Han Senator. The act did not look like a provocation or an assault, but seemed to be a come here between humans. Han Sen thought he was mistaken, rubbed his eyes, and found it was still waving like that. Big crab, you are not a flirty girl. There is no use for you to tempt me like this. Han Sen did not know what the golden crab wanted. so of course he could not approach it. Han Sen simply yelled at the crab. Han Sen did not know whether the golden crab understood himself, but it most likely did not. After Han Sen said that, the golden crab turned around and pointed at the silver eel's body with its pincer, and then pointed to Han. Senator Han Sen saw the golden crab making gestures, not understanding what it meant. He was so confused that he was full of questions. At this point, Han Sen only regretted that he had never learned the language of the crab. Otherwise, he might be able to chat with this crab to see what was it that it wanted. The golden crab made the gestures again and again, repeating its moves. It was blowing bubbles from time to time, seeming to be very anxious, wishing it could speak to Han Sen. Han Sen watched for a while and felt his talent in learning the crab language was indeed lacking. However, he suddenly thought of one thing, which was the fact that he still had the spirit snow charmer. Although she had lost the ability to control other creatures after it gave Han Sen her allegiance, she had been the master of creatures once, so she might understood what the crab was talking about. Summoning Snow Charmer, Han Sen pointed at the golden crab making the gestures and asked her, "Snow Charmer, do you know its language?"
No, Snow Charmer answered decisively.
Han Sen was suddenly very disappointed. Since even Snow Charmer did not understand the crab language, it was impossible for himself to know what it was trying to say. However, "I do know what it means," Snow Charmer continued to say. "What does it want to say?" Han Sen was excited and asked Snow Charmer. Snow Charmer said quietly, "Its gesture is quite obvious. It wants to split the body of the silver eel with you." Han Sen was dazed. Looking at the gestures of the golden crab, he felt it was true. The golden crab made a gesture in the middle of the silver eel's body and then pointed to both sides, and Han Senator, it seemed to be saying Han Sen could pick one side.
Han Sen blew his head.
Such a simple gesture, yet he was unable to understand it. How foolish. Han Sen quickly took Snow Charmer back. Making his servant see his foolish side, Han Sen felt quite embarrassed. "Half is no. 2/3. Mine," Han Sen gestured as he spoke, sounding like an alien. However, this time the golden crab was the one who was confused. It stared at Han Sen with bubbles coming out of its mouth and even scratched its head with its pincer like a person. Seeing that the golden crab did not understand him, Han Sen did not dare to approach the body either. He had to gesture to the golden crab to ask it to step aside repeatedly. Luckily, this gesture was easy to be understood. The golden crab moved aside and stared at Han Sen in suspicion. Han Sen gestured it to move aside a bit further, and so it did. After a couple of times, Han Sen made sure that the distance between the golden crab and the silver eel was safe to him. He then walked next to the silver eel's body, gesturing at 2/3 of the body like the golden crab. He then pointed the smaller part, and then the golden crab, the larger part, and then himself. The golden crab seemed to be understanding this time. As it shook its pincer, it moved its claws and returned to the eel. Han Sen felt scared and stepped back quickly, but the golden crab did not mean to chase after him. It gestured on the body again, meaning it insisted on half and half. Han Sen could not believe that he would bargain with a crab at this place with gestures. And this golden crab looked like an older lady bargaining in the farmer's market, not willing to sacrifice anything. The man and the crab discussed for a while, and finally reached an agreement. Han Sen could take about 3/5, while the golden crab was to take 2/5. "Eat as you want. I wish you the bloody crab would be poisoned to death." Han Sen cut the body of the silver eel according to the proportion they had agreed through gestures. Seeing the golden crab taking its part with its pincer, Han Sen cursed inwardly. Han Sen was afraid that the crab might snatch his part after it finished its own, so he summoned the angel, feeding the remaining silver eel to her. The archangel was the main force to help him hunt super creatures, so it was essential to Han Sen that she transform again. Sacred blood meat was not a waste on her. In addition, this silver eel was as thick as a bucket and more than 30 feet long. Han Sen's part was about 18 feet long. It was too much for him to eat up, while the archangel was eating with ease. Her mouth moving non-stop, she was not affected by the toxins at all. The silver eel disappeared quickly. Han Sen then had the time to look at the beast soul of the silver eel. Han Sen felt he was a bit too lucky recently. As long as he hunted a sacred blood creature, he would gain a beast soul, which even scared Han Sen himself a little bit. He was afraid that he might have used up his luck and would become unlucky. Type of beast soul of sacred blood silver eel, water mount. Water mount.
Han Sen become overjoyed.
He was just wondering how he could come back to this place again. After all, humans could not stay in the water for a long time, and this place was so deep in the water. Han Sen was not sure whether he was able to dive so deep himself. With the silver eel mount, it would be easy for him to come down. The only shortcoming of the beast soul was that it could not be used on the land. However, that did not trouble Han Sen at all. He had the golden growler on the land and did not need anything else. As the archangel was enjoying the needs of the silver eel, Han Sen checked the crystal sailboat out and climbed to the deck. The sailboat was so big and carved out of crystal. However, nothing could be seen inside the boat, which made him feel quite weird. The golden crab had disappeared in a cabin, so Han Sen wanted to see whether there was other stuff in the cabin. However, before he came to the entrance, the golden crab suddenly rushed out, waving the pincer fiercely at Han Sen. "Buddy, don't be so nervous. I am only looking around and do not mean you harm," Han Sen stepped back and said with a smile, seeing that the golden crab was just guarding the entrance and did not chase him. However, the golden crab did not know what he was talking about, threatening him against approaching with its pincer. The more reluctant the golden crab was, the more Han Sen wanted to see what was in the cabin. However, he looked at the entire crystal sailboat and found that entrance was the only one. Since it was guarded by the golden crab, there was no way that Han Sen could enter. "How come you are not poisoned?" Han Sen became upset, as he was not able to see what was inside the boat. He tried to stick his head up and look. Han Sen was no match of the golden crab, so he had to retreat temporarily to think of another way. Currently, Han Sen was very curious about the thing inside the crystal boat and was not in a rush to leave. In addition, he wondered if those people from Black God Shelter were still guarding outside, so it was unnecessary for him to go out of the water. "When I go out, I will definitely try to wipe out Black God Shelter." Han Sen decided that as long as Black God Shelter was still there, his grudge would never disappear. In addition, Goddess Shelter was surrounded by ocean in 3 directions. In order to develop, it must expand to the ice field, which meant he must have his own place here. Now that Black God did him a service by becoming his enemy, Han Sen would not be polite with him. He was calculating how he could kill the group of people and take their place for himself. Han Sen had heard from Li Xingluan that Black God was the strongest among the 3 forces on the ice field with the most resources. Li Xingluan and the other force could only be its match when they united, maintaining the balance between the 3. Previously, when Starwheel Shelter was under the attack of spirits and the other shelter was distracted, Black God Shelter did not try to help. They probably wanted to unite the entire ice field after Starwheel Shelter was wiped out. It was not easy to conquer Black God Shelter, obviously. Blood God himself was stronger than Han Sen, so he was very likely someone that had almost maxed out on Sacred Geno points. His fitness index should be more than 120. In addition, Han Sen was deterred by the knife skills of Black God. Up until this moment, Han Sen still failed to understand how the strike disappeared, and if he did not understand it, he would suffer again when faced with Black God. "If I could not beat him, I would rob him." Black God Shelter has such a large territory that I don't believe they could guard all the places if I attacked one by one. Han Sen made up his mind to take care of the Black God territory when he got out. When he returned to the lower level of the boat, he saw that the Archangel had almost finished the body of the silver eel, with only a head left. Han Sen had a thought and stopped the Archangel from her feast, taking her back into his Sea of Soul. Han Sen looked around and hanged the head of the silver eel on a rope in front of the ship and hid on the right flank of the ship himself. After waiting for several hours, he indeed saw the golden crab sneaking out. However, because there was only a single rope, the crab could not climb up with its claws. It had to jump up to reach the head of the eel with its pincer. Seeing that the golden crab, having left the crystal, Han Sen secretly climbed onto the deck and sneaked into the cabin. When the golden crab was under the silver eel, it jumped twice but did not catch the head of the silver eel. Han Sen felt content secretly. He had calculated the height of the jump of the crab, and he deliberately made it hard for it to reach. However, the crab would not give up either. This way, he had enough time. Standing in front of the entrance, Han Sen looked inside the cabin. It was a hall inside. Everything was carved out of crystal, looking very delicate and beautiful. In the middle of the hall, the crystal table was placed. Han Sen originally thought it was a table, but when he entered, he found it was no table, but a crystal treasure box, with the crystal lock on the outside. However, the lock was not locked, so it was not really effective. Is there some kind of treasure of the pirate or curse of the phantom boat? Han Sen suddenly felt hesitant, not sure whether he should open this giant whistle box. It was so weird that there might be something dangerous inside. Greed and curiosity eventually beat his logic. Han Sen heard the noise of the head of the silver eel falling and knew that the golden crab would return very soon. He gritted his teeth, summoned Snow Charmer, stood next to the cabin door, and asked Snow Charmer to open the crystal box. The spirit was absolutely loyal to her master. After hearing the command, she took off the lock and lifted the lid of the box. Seeing nothing dangerous had happened, Han Sen quickly walked up to the crystal treasure box and had a look. Han Sen blinked and failed to react in time. In the treasure box there was a woman, whose lower body was a fishtail. Her upper body was naked and pale, with 2 scallops covering her boobs. Her long blue hair fell like a waterfall, and her ears were blue fins, looking pretty but weird. Is this thing a mermaid? Han Sen looked at the woman inside the treasure box and saw 2 other things next to her. One was a staff shaped like blue coral, and the other was a shiny gemstone. Spirit staff. Spirit stone. Is this mermaid-like creature a spirit? Han Sen saw what the 2 items were and looked to the mermaid in the box, surprised. According to the logic, once the shelter was conquered, the spirit had no way to run away. It could either choose to give its allegiance or destroy itself together with the spirit stone. How come this mermaid-like spirit was placed in this box? Suddenly, a thought made Han Sen's eyes lit up. The sailboat does not look like it was made by humans. Is it possible that this crystal sailboat is in fact a shelter? With the noise outside, Han Sen knew the golden crab seemed to be back. He quickly grabbed the spirit stone. If the mermaid was really a spirit, as long as Han Sen grabbed the spirit stone, the spirit must be his. Just when Han Sen put his hands on the spirit stone, the golden crab had rushed into the hall. After it saw Han Sen, it became furious, rushing toward him waving its pincer. He took the spirit stone in his hand and ran around the hall. He used the techniques in Dongshin Sutra and ran from the golden crab using the pillars and other stuff as obstructions. Han Sen and the crab were running inside the crystal boat, and there was nothing the golden crab could do to Han Sen. When Han Sen ran, he suddenly heard a noise. Where the noise came from was the box that trapped the mermaid spirit. When he turned around to look, he saw the mermaid had sat up. Her white hands rubbed her eyes and then stretched. It looked like she had slept well. After the mermaid woke up, she saw Han Sen and the spirit stone in his hand. Her blue eyes were suddenly dazed, and she froze for a while. The golden crab was still chasing after Han Senator when Han Sen was about to continue to run. He suddenly saw the mermaid taking up the staff and pointing it to the golden crab. The golden crab went to the side immediately and did not chase Han Sen anymore. The mermaid went out of the crystal box with the staff in her hand. When she walked, a piece of wave moved under her fishtail, supporting her to go forward. The mermaid went up to Han Sen, bowed to him with a hand on her right chest, and then she said, "Mermaid Princess wishes to give her master her pure soul and become his loyal servant." Mermaid Princess. This mermaid is a royal spirit. Han Sen heard her words and became overjoyed. He did not expect a mishap had come a blessing. Just by wandering around under the water, he had gained a royal spirit. There were 2 types of royal spirits. One was princess and the other was prince. Since the mermaid caught herself a princess, she was for sure a royal spirit. Han Sen did not hesitate and put the spirit stone on her forehead. In blue light, the spirit stone and the mermaid became one. They both became a light that entered Han Sen's sea of soul. Mermaid Princess, royal spirit. She is indeed a royal spirit. Han Sen checked the information of the princess. Although he had expected it, he still became overjoyed. After the mermaid princess became Han Sen's, The golden crab suddenly became fierce again. It was no longer bound by the spirit and rushed to Han Sen again. Han Sen ran out of the cabin to dodge the attack of the golden crab. He made it all the way under the crystal boat, and the golden crab then gave up its chase. Han Sen moved further away from the boat and summoned the mermaid princess. He then commanded her, "Get rid of the annoying crab." Since it was a royal spirit, then her ability should be the equivalence of a sacred blood creature. With her unique intelligence, she should be able to be the match of the crab even if she could not kill it. However, the mermaid did not move at Han Sen's command. She took a deep breath. Her ample breasts under white scallops shivered, and she said, "Master, I don't have the ability to kill it." Han Sen felt dazed and looked at her. "Are you not a royal spirit? Even if you could not kill the crab, you should be able to fight it?" "Sorry, master. I am not a fighting spirit. I do not have the ability to fight," said the mermaid princess. "Then what is your ability?"
Han Sen asked curiously.
He had heard about the non-combatant spirits, which were rather rare. However, that was mainly because the spirits that humans gained were limited in general. "I could operate the crystal palace." The mermaid princess pointed at the crystal sailboat. "How would that be useful?" Han Sen looked at the mermaid princess, dazed. The ability of this royal spirit was just to operate a boat. Han Sen could not think of what use it would serve. The Crystal Palace shelter is indestructible internally. It could sail to any place in the water, and it could go to the bottom of the sea. Except for the fact that it could not leave the water, Crystal Palace could reach anywhere. Mermaid Princess was obviously upset about Han Sen questioning her ability. Han Sen thought about it and reckoned that this ability was rather nice. Since the boat was a royal shelter, Han Sen now had a moving castle on the ocean with Mermaid Princess. He could go hunting without any efforts, which would solve the issue of the lack of creatures. Thinking it was a nice thing to have, Han Sen commanded the Mermaid Princess again, "Okay, get the Crystal Palace over here right now." "Sorry, master. I could not." The spirit said helplessly. "How come you could not do that either? Didn't you just say that you could operate the Crystal Palace?" Han Sen looked at the spirit in suspicion. "I must be sitting on the operating seat of the Crystal Palace to control it," answered Mermaid Princess.
Han Sen became sumevhat depressed.
The golden crab was guarding the cabin, so it did not make sense for him to rush inside. In addition, God knows whether there were more impressive creatures inside. Forget it. When I think of a way to kill the crab, I will take back the Crystal Palace. Han Sen gave up the thought of taking the sailboat by force. Other people did not have Mermaid Princess anyway, so they could not take the sailboat away even if they had discovered it. At a remote corner of the frozen lake, Han Sen made an ice hole from underneath the water and climbed out. He shook off the water on his body and quickly left the lake for the ice field, seeing no one was around. Han Sen wanted to go to Starwheel Shelter to ask Li Xingluan about the detailed information of Black God Shelter. Only when he had more information about his enemy could he hit his enemy harder. Especially, Han Sen must find out about Black God's knife skills. Li Xingluan was very glad to see Han Sen visiting him. Hearing Han Sen explaining his conflict with Black God, he frowned and said, "Black God is more and more arrogant and wanton." Li Xingluan explained the background of Black God in details to Han Sen, which made Han Sen frown slightly. The family of Black God was quite ordinary, but he was working for a force in the Alliance, which made it almost impossible for Han Sen to kill him in the Alliance. Among all the shelters, he was the strongest on the ice field. In addition, every month he provided a large sum of income to the force in the Alliance, which gave him strong support. It was not easy to take him down. As for the knife skills of Black God, all Li Xingluan knew was that it was called Tornado Knife. He did not know how it worked either. Li Xingluan only knew that when Black God made the move, the knife would disappear for a moment, as if it was teleported. Of course, Black God was merely an evolver, so he could not have the ability to make the knife teleport. There must be some special techniques that they did not know of. Tornado Knife, it sounds familiar somehow? Han Sen felt he had heard about the name somewhere. Thinking about it, Han Sen then remembered that Tang Jinliu had once said that one of his knife skills was Tornado Knife. However, from what Han Sen could remember, Tang Jinliu did not have the ability to make his weapon disappear. Would this Black God be related to Tang Jinliu? Han Sen was determined to ask Tang Jinliu first when he went back, to figure out what tornado knife was about. After he returned to the alliance, Han Sen asked Ji Yanran to get him the number of Tang Jinliu in the military.
Han Sen kontaktet Tang Shenliu.
Han Sen, how does it feel to be a soldier?
Tang Shenliu asked Han Sen, smiling.
I don't feel much, Han Sen shrugged and said. He was telling the truth. Although he was now Ji Yanran's guard, the actual guard was Annie, so Han Sen was merely a declaration. In fact, no one expected that Han Sen could protect Ji Yanran as an evolver. His position was required by Ji Yanran herself, and initially her guard was only Annie. However, since Annie had arrived, Han Sen had a lot less time to spend with Ji Yanran. That woman was following Ji Yanran almost 24/7, which made Han Sen very mad about it, even questioning whether she was a lesbian in love with Ji Yanran. Haha, your life is great. With the beauty on your side, it is not like an ordinary service. You are completely on vacation with your girl. Lin Feng and I are having a terrible time. We are either training or fighting the Shura, almost losing our lives several times, said Tang Jinliu, feeling upset. How come you guys are at the front?
Han Sen asked, putslig.
With the background of Tang Jinliu and Lin Feng, it should be easy for them to stay in the back, but they were serving in the front. It is completely Lin Feng's idea. He said only by doing this can we exercise ourselves. He must stay in this hell, and the wars are so frequent that I have almost gone mad. Although Tang Jinliu said that, he was smiling. Obviously, he was just joking. Stop. Han Sen looked at Tang Jinliu carefully and found he had much darker skin than before. He also looked tougher with an injury that had not cured on his forehead, looking more like a man. Tang Jinliu explained briefly what was happening on his side. Lin Feng and he were Warframe soldiers, and on their planet, humans and Shura were coexisting, fighting for the mines. However, because of the location of the planet, no one could take the entire planet. Both forces had armies on the planet, and they fought once in a while. When they had finished chatting, Han Sen then asked about Black God and Tornado Knife. After hearing Han Sen's words, Tang Jinliu hit the table madly and said coldly, "Damn it. Han Sen, if you have the chance, kill the bastard for me." Han Sen was surprised to see Tang Jinliu being so excited, so he asked Tang Jinliu what had happened. Tang Jinliu told Han Sen that Tornado Knife was originally one of the family secrets of the Tangs. Later on, due to some incidents in the family, Tornado Knife was robbed by others, which was a huge shame for the family. Then I could act freely. Han Sen was initially afraid that there might be some kind of connection between Black God and Tang Jinliu, which might be awkward in the future. At this point, he was completely relaxed. Kill him, and I will treat you to drinks. Do not worry about people supporting Black God. If you could kill him, I will take care of those people. Tang Jinliu told Han Sen about the core secret of Tornado Knife, wishing Han Sen could get rid of Tang Jinliu, giving his family justice. After hearing Tang Jinliu's explanation, Han Sen understood why it looked like Black God's knife had disappeared. In fact, it did not truly disappear. Just because the Tornado Knife was so fast, it felt like it had disappeared. The speed was not continuous, but a temporary effect in the attack. In a short amount of time, the speed of the knife increased greatly, making the high speed even higher, causing a visual illusion. In fact, the knife seen by the eyes was the shadow of the knife. The real knife had already changed its location. Although Han Sen had understood the mechanism of Tornado Knife, it was still very difficult to tackle it. At that kind of speed, even if he knew what was happening, it would be useless if he could not follow the knife. With Han Sen's eyesight, he could not even see the knife. So even if he knew the knife was elsewhere, he could not block it. Tang Jinliu did not have enough speed and strength in the past, so he did not achieve the same effect as Black God. Currently, if he used the skills, he would not be worse than Black God. Do you have time tomorrow?
Tang Shenliu asked Han Sen. Yes, replied Han Sen.
Okay then. You go to the virtual camp tomorrow and I will spar with you. Today I have something else, so I must leave now. Tang Jinliu was a decisive person, so he directly hung up. Han Sen knew that Tang Jinliu was going to spar with him using Tornado Knife, which was great news to Han Sen.